is Dr. Justyna Agnieszka Chevalier. This is chapter 12, how to assure that history is not a matrix to encarve again the same mistakes, wars like eugenics, concentration camps, discrimination, abuse, a style of Dr. Mendele, of mental health and of medicine, and abuse of that is still ongoing, is at all times a risk, and history does teach us a lesson if you listen to me carefully, because this is a new information and you learn from me. We can create a society that has chances to not repeat itself in action and in planning and in conscious efforts, where work is based on utmost relevant to now demand and not a luxury or competed for vanity. And I am talking about every single person's unique skills, because there is a wisdom of crowds, the same as there is a stupidity of masses. Both exist concomitantly and are, depending on times, remediable by knowledge and implementation of that knowledge. Listen to me carefully. First of all, as a reminder, I am looking for persons who would like to form an assembly, to form a resistance group, including existing resistance groups that I contacted, to force persons who use laws on local and on state as well as on international level to impede progress and to kill and injure and prejudice us all, not understanding that there is no other. And that is, again, I will repeat that lesson from law that I learned from pretty much when I was a fetus and when my mother was taking bar exams and fought for rights of self to be a licensed practicing lawyer in Poland, and managed to do so in her late 20s despite having children and quite of an tormentous marriage. I would like to tell you that the rule, capital rule of law, is such that first thing, rule on paper, even from Constitution or Declaration of Human Rights, any rule, has to result in amelioration, immediate amelioration of situation, long term, and not only short-term provision of goods that prejudices no one. And such is a scope of law that we ask about a question about proportionality. Is enforcing a given rule of law, legal one, in other circumstances applicable, causing harm to that person, posing risk for that person to engage in criminal activity or become killed, poses the disproportionate discomfort or struggle in extraordinary efforts, while person is blamed for it or marked as at fault in application of that rule, and is punishment actually not warranted, and is an act of harm or crime applied to that person based on an answering of a question. Is a person pursuing an action right now in front of me that is to an immediate surroundings and others a harm, directly harmful, causing injuries, or is application of that law as counter hypothesis causing that person may be killed or harmed or forced into a situation in which force that person will have to use to defend self. If the answer is the application of rule, legal normalized rule in a given personal context, results in harm bodily harm especially, to a person, struggle, starvation, falling, freezing, being exposed to harassment, being exposed to extortion, being exposed to breaking laws in other circumstances, then the application of that legal rule is, listen to me carefully, illegal. That is the cardinal rule of law that we learn in legal studies during the first year. And if you do not have such knowledge, you have no business in police, DMV, or especially licensed as practitioner and a lawyer. I hope that I am clear on that. Even if all lawyers omit representation, each and every person can represent self, regardless of job, country of origins, place of current residence, as well as any sort of documentation or status, including any diseases or any addictions, because sometimes that is marked as a fault of character, or past misdemeanors or crimes, or remorse. And so now, to add to the prior video in forensics, I'm gonna add atrocities. Human rights and animal rights are not linked, and that has to change. And PETA needs to understand that their work actually saves lives of humans in proportion to the animals, if humans are also pursued with the same passion as animals and compensated with provision of chance to unblock agriculture and have crops and persons paid for collection of fruits and vegetables, and not illegal temporary workers sleeping in parks used for that under radar, okay, and discriminated in public, because that is also illegal to do. I hope you are clear on that, regardless of country or region. And that is then when it is important that PETA also knows that, for instance, demand for food is met by agriculture, Department of Agriculture. Human rights activists writes a petition to enable land at just prices to this associate debt from basic needs provision. Okay? Not to force on us foreign capital or pseudo-tourism. And secondly, lower when that food is growing and present in PVCs and all over. Here, for instance, in Washington, there is a garden with decorative vegetables. That should be in absence of food and persons crying, and I've seen manly men crying, I just want to have some food. Can you, for instance, even pretend to be my wife, because otherwise they're not gonna give me any. And so what I am here saying, that is illegal to do and non-conservatism, because James Dean also was a person who was a traditional American, an individualist, and that is in a spirit of American manhood to be alone for females as well, especially in Olympia, where first right to vote was established. And so that having food then has that food provided by, for instance, Imperfect Foods, for which I had actually wonderful chance to work for, though I have some things to contribute to them to improve that environment. Take all of criticism as intent to improve without doing any harm, as little harm as possible, in fact, from me, and assume that others wish for that if only they know the way and feel non-resentful. And so then provision of fast food chains and all of the restaurants per demand is plant-based, not in remediation, but in actual craving for fresh fruits and vegetables that can grow outside instead of decorative plants and fees for mowing grass. Is it a wheatgrass? No. I cannot drink it? No. So it is kind of, in presence of hunger, useless, as long as animals are killed and humans are starved and dying. That is to ant. Therefore, when food is present, agriculture functioning, it needs to be quick and in teams. There is job opportunities, mandatory ones in fact, for all. And that opens up opportunity for self-sustainable households. And then in fast food chains, private and public, Surgeon General Mark Smith as source of death that in ecosystem results in mimicking, like during Nazi Germany, of a concentration camp on a place where cattle is kept for humans. Use the same as for brushes of hair of horses, use of human hair against will, labeling some humans inferior as if chickens, nicknaming females such as those from a strip club in Killeen that wanted to hire me and we never managed to do so because that African actually escaped. I don't know what happened to him. I hope he's alive, fingers crossed. And then having persons in a group home kept or medicated like barbiturated or stunned chicken and killed, raped as if those were a source of eggs. Cause, effect. What we do in a given area in epidemiology to animals, we then enact and feel that it is normal on certain humans, while then marking selves as breeding dogs. And that was Hitler-Jungen. Breeding dogs were forced in often presence of disgust, the same as a reality, on family members and also on childhood friends in absence of willingness, because there was no mutual love to have sex, in it artificially generated by stimulation or in presence of some sort of substances, sexual act, to have children then later on with neurodevelopmental disabilities, that schizophrenic or with epilepsy, in a meaning in which that exists, meaning adding co-parenting of whoever it is that needs to participate in a most amazing act of human love that is in fact speechless, and technical descriptions are offensive to it, to all of us past certain age, also in sometimes in medical circumstances, and should not be offended by labels of drugging or addictions or wrongdoing or evil doing and harm. And so what I am saying is this: associate, because we killed cattle in Nazi Germany as human species, because Hitler was chosen in presence of famine, there were not enough plants, ignorance to life, itemization I call it, of life. And then the exact same for rich Jewish population was done in Polish Oświęcim, and for Polish some population also, to exact same way in trains, transporting trains the same as used to transport cattle, to bring humans as if animals, stand the same as cows, tattoo like my grandfather was, cut hair to paint, like in a Różewicz poem that was a winner of Nobel Prize, and collect for in experimentation the same as lab rats, information that is useless because creating diseases artificially and experimenting against will sends message that there is suffering and creates mental illness somewhere else and death. There is no other. There is no gain in torturing a rat or trapping a cow. And so once disabling actually that sort of creation by comparison, because that is also art in Hollywood, in which on a cross there is a lamb, because Jesus killed lamb to feed his disciples, prevented from fishing because he wanted to save those fish actually, and they were also farmers. He then was done to what was done to the lamb unconsciously, because that was being done to the lamb then. And artists know it, and I as a physician know it as a fact. This is epidemiology, ladies and gentlemen. There's no mystery about it. Reflected in tattoos, in slogans, in vocabulary, in abbreviation, and in fear of love, because tenderness is associated with trapping and killing. Second example of that, gulag, working gulag and slavery. Mules and cows, ladies and gentlemen. Cause effect. You enslaved it. I'm not saying it's an explanation. Let's not do that. Associated with humans, provide food in restaurants and diminish risk of that and confusion that it is normal in human societies. Please, and let history not repeat ourselves. And let's not mysterize that anymore.